Mann auf Gefechtsstation!
Hey folks, Iolair here. Today's video is the first in a series where I'll cover practices I follow when playing battles in World of Warships. Basically, what are the things that I'm thinking about and I'm doing while I'm playing games? Now, I'm aiming this series at players who are looking to improve their ability to execute in battles, either by getting better results for themselves individually or helping their teams win more games, or both. Now, I'm making the assumption in this video series that viewers already have a good understanding of the game's base mechanics like concealment, aiming, angling, torpedoes, radar, hydro, etc., stuff like that. Now, this first video that you're watching right now is sort of a primer, and I'll discuss points and topics that are applicable for playing any class of ship, and then I'll plan to have subsequent videos to discuss how these practices apply to each class specifically. Now, for convenience, I've left an index for the video in the description below so that you can skip to any particular section you want to watch, or if you just want to come back and rewatch a specific section. Now, for me, there are sort of three phases or parts to playing battles in the game. First is to learn your ship, especially if it's new to you, so that you are better prepared to play the ship in random battles or more competitive arenas like clan battles or ranked battles. The second part or phase is to apply good practices during a battle, which is clearly where I'll spend most of the time of this video. And then the third part is to have an honest assessment of your own performance after a battle is over. With regard to learning your ship, I think there are some important motivations here. First is to help you be better prepared to play a ship effectively. And secondly is to frankly help avoid awkward or frustrating experiences due to a lack of experience or knowledge. Now, think about how many times we see players like sending torpedoes against opponents that are clearly way too far away for the torpedoes to hit, or players who activate radar when they are clearly not close enough to the cap or the region that they want to radar. And then for me personally, a big part of it is learning shell ballistics and realizing that I don't understand them well and I need to get them mastered before I play more competitively. The first part of studying a new ship is to look at it in port and review her parameters like her armor, her health pool, artillery, torpedoes, AA, the speed of the ship and the rudder shift, concealment, stuff like that. Understanding a ship's parameters helps you get an early sense of a ship's capabilities, her strengths, and her limitations. And this is also why I discuss parameters in my ship reviews and actually go to port and walk through that, because I'm actually doing the same process in those videos that I do privately when I'm researching a ship. Then the second part of learning a ship is to research a ship's playstyle, including her characteristics, her strengths and limitations, by talking to others that you know that have success or understand the ship well, or by reviewing online resources like YouTube videos from community contributors, or reviewing the World of Warships wiki, Reddit, Facebook, stuff like that. And these same resources should also be able to provide information on recommended components for a ship. And by components, I mean things like upgrades, commander skills, signals, the order in which to research modules if you're working on a researchable ship. And then the last part of learning a ship is to practice in co-op or even the training room so that you can get some firsthand experience with a ship in terms of how she handles and how she performs before heading into random battles or, like I said, other more competitive arenas. Co-op is a great place to get a feel for a ship's handling, the speed of the ship, the maneuverability, the rudder shift, the gun handling, the turret speed, etc. Shell ballistics is a great thing. And again, that's where I spend a lot of time with learning a new ship. You also can learn, what the torpedo launch angles are, detection ranges relative to your firing range, stuff like that. So it's a really good resource to learn these things and get some firsthand exposure to that. And then also co-op is a great place to learn new mechanics that you're completely unfamiliar with. And the example I'll use here is when I started learning to play carriers more seriously this year, I played well more than 100 battles in co-op to get what I hope would is a good or decent understanding of plane mechanics and attack vectors and stuff like that before I even attempted a random battle. Now, once I do get to battle, here's the things that I think about. So, first of all, is to play to the objective. And the objective will vary depending upon the battle mode, but most modes, other than standard battle, usually involve taking and defending capture points and preventing opponents from doing the same. So, if you want to have the most positive influence on potentially winning games, playing to the objective is the most important part and not losing sight on that. The second part or second practice I think about is studying teams' rosters before a battle actually starts. So you'll have time once the game starts to understand which map you're on and the game mode and your position on the map. And you usually have a minute or two to get that sorted out. But before the game even starts, look at the team rosters. Look at how the teams are make up against each other, what your allies might be able to do for you, what opponents might be threats or might be key priorities for your team, stuff like that, so that you aren't surprised and say, like, you're playing a destroyer and then didn't realize that they had a radar cruiser. You don't want to be in situations like that. You want to have some good understanding of team makeups before you get into the battle. The third part is to stay alive, and this seems probably plainly obvious, and there are going to be various strategies you take depending upon which class you're in to stay alive. But at the end of the day, you can't contribute if you're dead or sunk, so staying alive is important. The fourth point is to use the minimap, and I can't overemphasize this. The minimap is by far and away the most useful tool Wargaming puts in World of Warships to help us make good decisions about our plan and how we play a game. I am always dismayed when I hear a player say that they wish they could just hide the minimap altogether, or that they minimize the minimap because they see it as a visual distraction. That tells me that that player doesn't think about the bigger picture when it comes to playing games, and they're just sort of aimlessly sailing around looking for stuff to shoot. The next point is to develop good situational awareness. Now, this is a huge topic and this is a very broad statement, but I'll just say that situational awareness, basically understanding what's happening around you and the game overall, is by far and away the most important skill to learn in the game. So, regardless of what class you're playing, if you understand what's happening around you and the game, you can make better decisions about what you should be doing and how to protect yourself and how to support your allies and all these other things that I'm going to touch on here in a moment. The next point that I think about is to monitor the match conditions. Basically, you want to look at a match's momentum, whether you need to make a play or your team needs to make a play to help the team catch up if you're behind, or when you need to conserve your lead and try not to win harder, as the Mighty Jingles refers to. Basically, don't throw away wins, and monitoring the match conditions so that you can understand what's happening in terms of in terms of points and caps and so forth is very important. The next part is to support your allies. Again, this seems like plainly obvious, but it's not uncommon that people do things that they don't realize that they're not helping their allies, or they're actually doing things that are detrimental for the team, either through just selfish play or just a lack of awareness of what they're doing or not doing. And the actions you take will vary widely depending upon which class you play. But the overarching sense here is to be in positions and take actions that support the team. The next point is to understand threats. And that means understanding or deducing where the threats are that affect you, as well as potential teammates that you're depending on, so that you can avoid problems and help alert your teammates to avoiding problems. Things like, is there a destroyer on your flank that's sending torpedoes in your region? That affects, depending upon which class you're in, that you may need to take action there, right? Or if you're in a cruiser and you need to know where the opposing battleships are so that you aren't caught broadside and suddenly your game ends early. Things like that. To that point, the next point point I think about is protecting yourself. And that means using positioning, terrain, distraction, etc., to be able to contribute without overextending or putting yourself in vulnerable situations. And again, this is going to vary, or what this means varies depending upon the class. But hopefully, this gives you some sense of protecting yourself in general to be able to maintain your survivability is important. Next is to always have an exit strategy. And again, this might seem kind of obvious and is simply an extension of some of these other points, but I want to stress this because you basically want to always be in a position that you can get yourself out of trouble in case your position is compromised or exposed. So that means being able to hold your fire and drop into concealment so that you can move to another position, or be able to slip behind terrain, or take some sort of other action to be able to get yourself out of trouble. This also means avoid putting yourself in positions that are inescapable, and that comes back to being situationally aware, and not overextending. Now, the last point here, again, might seem plainly obvious, but I want to make the point here, which is rule 0, have fun. I'm sorry, Ninja, but it really is just a game, and having fun is the most important factor. And so my goal in this video is to make the game more enjoyable for you by helping you improve your game skills and therefore hopefully make you have more fun. And then finally, once a battle is over, I think it's important to assess your own performance. First, clearly take pride in successes you've had in the game. The caps taken, ships sunk, damage done, achievements earned, etc., etc. But maybe more importantly is to identify mistakes made and opportunities lost. As the old expression goes, we learn more from our mistakes than our successes, and that certainly applies here. Thirdly is to determine what changes you want to make to improve your performance going forward, so that if you're in a similar situation in the future, or if you anticipate you might be in a bad situation, that you can help avoid that or know how to get out of it if you do end up in that situation again. And then lastly is to learn from others. And that can involve divisioning with skilled players who can offer live guidance during a game. Obviously, this means planning ahead that you're going to be in those games, or division with players that can provide guidance. But those same players can provide guidance after a game is over to critique or offer feedback on what you did well and what you could improve. And then you can also take a look at what teammates did well. And what did they do to succeed? And it's okay to reach out to a teammate and say, hey, I noticed you did really well. Can you tell me a little bit what you did? I've done that a couple of times in my career as well, trying to understand how I can improve. Now, one thing I want to stress here also is to not linger on others' performance. It is way too easy, and we see this all the time, where players, including myself, I get frustrated with a loss or a bad game, and it's very easy to pass it off and say, hey, our destroyers were terrible, or our battleship sat at the back of the map, or whatever, and pass the blame onto others. Even if everybody else on the team plays poorly, you should at least look at what things you could do to maybe improve yourself. And more often than not, if I have a bad game, I usually find a thing or two that I say, hey, I could have done this better. It may not have affected the outcome of the game, but I can still improve my own experience going forward. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this sort of primer video. I realize I didn't give any concrete examples based on real games, but I will get to that in the subsequent videos. And I certainly hope that you found the information here at least useful on a theoretical level, and you can start thinking about the same things that I do when playing games. For those of you who have feedback, please give it. I am not perfect by any means, and I'm constantly learning, and we could all learn from each other. So if you have any suggestions on your own experiences and practices you follow that help you, please leave them in the comments so that we can all benefit. I think that's going to wrap it up. And like I said, I hope you found the video useful. And as always, we hope to see you out there on the virtual seas, and we wish you happy sailing.